Is 25 too young to be a mortgage advisor? I actually started myself as a mortgage advisor below 25, actually. So we're going to unpack that as my experiences of it. And also, has that changed since I'm now in my mid to potentially late 30s? And has that changed with people I've spoken to? We're going to unpack all of those now. Let's dive into the first question around it. So the very first question we have is, what actually makes a client trust an advisor? Is it age or is it something else? So I think that trust does come from, trust comes from the feeling that they feel like you have it under control, that you know what you're doing. Now, age does have a massive part of that. A part of someone's age makes people will feel there'll be more trust because they'll inherently believe that there's experience there. That's obviously a given, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's age that makes people trust you. They need to feel they're in competent hands. And I think that's the most important bit. Now, I think for mortgage advisors, who are under 25, around 25, you are at a disadvantage because you are younger, but there is other things you can do. It's how you dress, it's how you hold yourself. I think if you try to dress too old, you will look like you're wearing your dad's suit, so to speak. If you dress too young, you don't look very trustworthy. You have to find a kind of middle ground, and I do think that age is one playing fact. It absolutely is, and obviously the older you are, it just naturally will lend itself to that. With, I think, the peak really for mortgage advice and trust with age being in the kind of mid to late 30s into the kind of mid to late 40s. I think it doesn't peak after that, but that's where your age as authority really hits in those kind of peak earning years as a male and a female. So definitely there's lots of other factors around that. But the biggest one I think is, does the client feel like you know what you're doing and how you physically turn up, what you wear, how you talk, if you look timid, if you use slang language from people who are in, say, Gen Z language, if that's the case now, any of those things are going to flag up as people who are like not really trustworthy to a point. Obviously, if you're going to be dealing with younger people, then it's going to be fine. But there's not many 25-year-olds who are buying houses, especially in today's market. So what's the real disadvantage of being young in this job, and is it fixable? So I think the real disadvantage, there's a number of disadvantages with it, but I think the biggest one is you just don't have the life experience. I was 23 when I became a mortgage broker, and my sister was 19. And you don't have the life experience. I bought my first house when I was 25. I didn't really understand it. I didn't understand the whole process. I'd been an estate agent before, so I understood how the process worked, but I didn't understand the emotional impact of that. It's very similar to now. I'm a father of 3, and my understanding of being a parent is so much bigger than it was when I didn't have kids. And some of you 25-year-olds watching this, most of you probably won't fit that category, but it's a similar thing when you buy your first home. And so one of the disadvantages I think people have at that age is you just don't have as much life experience, like the kids, like the house, like the marriages, the breakups, the everything. You don't have that. And truth be told, you actually will not fit. You have been there. You literally will not understand it until you've done it. And that's the biggest disadvantage. And is it fixable? It's fixable by living your life, I think, and just accepting that there are going to be things that you are not going to be able to relate to in the same way that you will, but you will be in the future. I think that's one of the good things. And I have that with myself. You have it in these sections and series of your life where you're like, it's okay. It just takes a bit of time. And I think it's expecting and accepting that to begin with is probably the biggest play. It's not fixable, but that is your biggest disadvantage. You just haven't been on the earth long enough to experience a lot of what life has to give. And you know, me now, like I said, in my mid-30s, clinging on to those mid-30s, that it's completely different. And it'll be different again in my probably mid-40s and in mid-50s. Every time you look back and you're like, gosh, you didn't have a clue. And you don't. That's the biggest thing. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do the job, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to be good at the job. You can be practically good at the job. You just might not have the life experience and the empathy or sympathy. I don't know which one it is. I think it's sympathy. You might not be able to sympathize with them, but you could empathize with them, so to speak. Now, what advantage does being 25 give you that a 45-year-old advisor doesn't have? So honestly, with this, it's time in the game. If you start at 25, there's a couple of things. If you start at 25 instead of somebody starting at 45, you just have more time in the game to be able to build the client bank book, build the roster, and you have access to a load of people who are all going to go through those same things with you. So if you are a young mortgage advisor, you're going to have people who are going to be buying their first homes. Your friends are all going to be buying their first home, so you're going to be there. They're all going to be having their first kids, so you'll be able to protect them. They're all going to be selling their first home, so you'll be able to do that. They're all going to be buying their first buy-to-lets, and you can help them with that. There is so much that you can do. They'll be getting their private medical insurance. You can help them with that. There's so many things. As your career grows with age, your kind of client bank around you grows with age too. Whereas somebody who's 45, who comes into the industry at 45, most of those people would have had a mortgage advisor, multiple mortgage advisors potentially over the years. They would have got some protection in place. They've got some stuff in place, and it's less likely they're going to work with you. So I think getting leads, interestingly, is easier at 25 than it is at 45. That being said, that's the other side of that within that one. Is I also think that you have the ability to bootstrap it. At 45, you have a lot more usually, and it goes back to that life experience. The thing with life experience comes more responsibility, and so more responsibility is financial responsibility, mortgages, spouses, children, elderly parents, maybe potentially sick parents. All of these things are going to be juggling at 45, 35, 45, 55. That's all going to be there. Whereas at 25, you could still be living at home with mum and dad. You could be self-employed, 2 mortgages a month if you need to get off the ground. You can bootstrap that business, and it's not necessarily a big deal. I remember being really jealous of the idea that if I had been living with my parents when I'd first gone self-employed as a mortgage advisor, how much, one, money I would have been able to save, 2, that I wouldn't have actually needed to have done that much business to have a really great life. I could have easily made 50 grand a year and lived a wonderful life and bought all the games that I wanted at that time. Not the case now. There is huge advantages when you look at it that way. So then how should a 25-year-old broker handle the "you look too young" comment when it comes up? Now, this is going to come up every now and then. It doesn't come up as much as you would think. And I would say when it comes to this, how do you handle this? You handle it by just addressing it in the sense of like going, oh, that's interesting. And I would do this. I don't get asked that very often. Or my favorite one, do you know what? No one's ever said that to me before, so I don't really know how to respond. And that's it. I would just do that. And the reason why I say that is it's like hitting it back to them, because it's quite a rude comment, to be completely honest with you. When you say, oh, you look too young, you look young is a different thing. My sister, like I said, was 19 when she became a mortgage advisor, and she looks young. She's in her 30s now. She looks very young. And she looked really young when she was 19. And that would come up a lot. But she ended up working in high net worth banking, and the "you look young" thing would come up, and she'd be like, oh, okay. But by the nature of the fact that she was in that position meant she obviously was good, and she wouldn't condone it. I think that if you you're too young, that's more combative, it's more aggressive, and I'm not a fan of that. And that's where I would battle to that back, so to speak, with saying, hey, look, no one's ever said that to me before. That's what I do. And I'd be in a joke, go, do you know what? No one's ever said to me before. So I don't know, maybe I look too young to you. I don't know, I've never had someone say it. And the reason why that is you're going to hit into this point with them where they now feel a bit silly, potentially, because they've now done something that no one else has said because they thought everyone would say it. Sometimes you're just going to get idiots who are just like that. But that's how I would deal with it. And accept the fact that you are that age. You can't change that you're 25 or 20 or 21 or 22 or whatever it may be. You can't change that. You are just doing the best with what you have at the situations that you have. And by the way, that can be absolutely phenomenal. I don't think that it's negative at all. But you do get the odd person who, and it's more that they're just a bit of an idiot, to be completely honest with you. This too young thing is a thing. And most of the time, by the way, it's because they're a bit threatened a lot of the time. And it's a free market. If they think you're too young, let them go somewhere else. What would you tell a 25-year-old broker who's about to walk into their first client meeting feeling like a fraud? So I would tell them to don't worry about it, because at the end of the day, you know what you're doing. If you've done your research, you've done your qualifications, you're the qualified advisor. And the person sat across the table from you, 99 times out of 100 has, probably more than that, 999 times out of 1,000, let's say it that way, doesn't even know what you're talking about at all. They think they do, but they don't. They have no clue. And so you have to remember that even though they could be much older and much more, quote, experienced at life, but you are the mortgage expert. And unless they've done their CMAP, then just don't fret about it. I'd move straight in, just completely own it. You're not a fraud. You're supposed to be there. And there are going to be times where you feel that way. Normally that comes up. It comes up now, even with me, when I meet brokers and I coach businesses and I'm like, what am I doing here? And I've been doing it for over a decade, as in being a coach. I've been in the industry for, gosh, since I was like 21. And it still feels like a fraud at times. So I think that doesn't change no matter what you're doing. So yeah, don't feel like a fraud. Own it. I can promise you those people across from you, they do not know as much as you.